Hello, John Heaton, and I'm going to review this album, which I think is the last album that I haven't reviewed from George Harrison. And it was his first solo album, released on November the 1st, 1968. And I first got this album here on, this is a Japanese pressing. This is the back cover, which was some kind of painting stroke photo of the Berlin Wall, which is quite advanced for its time. And this picture, should have looked up who did the picture. Bob Gill, that we are. So this picture, and by the way, this is a movie, it's a soundtrack to a movie, which didn't do terribly well. I gather that it is available on DVD now, so I might check it out. I've never seen it, I don't think. Maybe clips. So when Bob Gill did this painting, the wall was complete. And George felt it was a little bit too depressing, so he wanted to have a little bit of ray of hope for the poor British businessman here. So he asked the artist if he could take a brick out, another brick in the wall. And the artist was not happy, but he obeyed George's wishes. So yeah, by all accounts, the film is quite fun, but nothing major. So this is the first solo album by any Beatle, and this is the Japanese packaging with pictures from the film in a nice booklet, and what I presume are either, it can't be the words because there's no words on this album, so it's some kind of essay in Japanese, and then it's not, rather disappointingly, it's not on the Apple label, it's on the EMI Odeon label, which I suppose is interesting for curiosity value. But for years I didn't have this on Apple and always wanted it on Apple. But it was very pricey to get second-hand on Apple, very pricey indeed. And then, but this Japanese copy came with a poster, which is basically the White Album George superimposed on top of the painting. And I've kept it in good condition over the years. It's huge. And yeah, there's a few blue tack marks on the back because I had it on the wall. But quite a nice feature of a lot of the Japanese issues in the 70s. They would come with extra little goodies or booklets or something. So that was my first copy, and then I'll show you my son's copy, which is the new vinyl, which I haven't picked up yet myself, but I will when it comes down in price a bit, with the original inner sleeve with the apple on the back, which is Apple Records Limited, 3 Savile Row, London W1, which I think, as I've mentioned in previous videos, you can still go and visit that location, and it is the site of an what's their name? Crombie kids clothes shop or something, and you can go and pretend to be interested in children's clothes and walk up the stairs, and you can't get to the roof, but there's a nice bit of Beatles memorabilia in the foyer, so that they are aware of the history of the building. And this version is on the beautiful Apple 180 gram vinyl, and actually it was, I think I'm right in saying, the first album to be released on the Apple label. George expected the film company to issue the soundtrack, but when they said no, we don't plan to, George said, well, we've just started the record company, Apple, so we shall I'll put it out on that. And it came out approximately 3 weeks before the White Album from the group, and about a few weeks before Two Virgins from John and Yoko. So it is the first. I'm pretty sure it's the first Apple record, and it didn't get terribly good reviews. I remember Carr and Tyler in the Beatles Illustrated Records saying the Indian musicians somewhat rescue it, but they concluded a poor start for Apple. I think over the years it's gained a bit of reputation. The CD of it came out first in '92, I think it was, with some nice sleeve notes from Derek Taylor. And I think the recent issue with the new George Harrison releases a few years ago contained some bonus tracks as well, which I don't have. But out of all those early experimental albums released by George himself and John and Yoko, this is probably the best of the lot. And not to say it's fantastic, because it's nowhere near on the level of an Abbey Road or a White Album, or it's not even in the same league really. But it's quite a pleasant soundtrack to, by all accounts, is quite a pleasant 60s period piece. So most of the tracks, all of the tracks are instrumental, and George kind of viewed a rough cut of the film and saw a kind of in the park sequence for one bit and a cowboy sequence for another, and wrote little bits. And the CD is on Apple, by the way. And he credited, there's quite a few Indian musicians on this album, and also Eric Clapton is featured, but he's referred to as Eddie Clayton. Ringo Starr apparently is on it, but he wasn't credited on the original, unless Roy Dyke is a pseudonym for Ringo, I'm not sure. But Tony Ashton and his band produced most of the Western style stuff on here, along with Eric and some Indian musicians who are too numerous to mention. The sessions there were recorded in Bombay, I think roughly the same time as when George recorded The Inner Light, the B-side of Lady Madonna, in December '67, I think it was. So, the standout tracks for me would be, if I'm honest, would probably be the Western ones. Party Seacom, the 11th track, is quite a moody song with some nice chord changes and nice use of the Moog, I think it is, or the Mellotron, I'm not sure. And then Skiing is a track featuring Eric Clapton on electric guitar, which is pretty decent. And Cowboy Sequences, cowboy music is a lot of these tracks are quite short. There was a bit of melody which was very reminiscent of Silent Night to my ears, but he got away with it. Probably not copyrighted Silent Night because it's so old. So by the way, another little story for you. My friend Dave Bloomfield, who used to work in London, gave that all up and went to live in the English countryside and opened an art gallery, and he called it the Wonderwall Gallery, and he didn't name it after the Oasis track, he named it after this album. And actually people used to come in, what am I showing you the CD for, sorry. People used to come into his gallery and said, did you name your gallery after Oasis? And he said, nope, George Harrison. And most people had not heard of Wonderwall music by George Harrison. So, and it was quite nice. Unfortunately, Dave passed away a few years ago, and at his funeral they played Wonderwall to Be Here, which is the penultimate track from this album. I played that at the funeral. Red Lady 2 is a nice keyboard number here. You know, most tracks, you know, a minute or two long, so none of them are going to go down in history as great compositions or anyway, but that's the way with film soundtracks. Maybe I should watch the film and see how the music works in conjunction with the film. But as a soundtrack on its own, it's listenable, and it's actually more than listenable in quite a few bits. You know, it's quite enjoyable. Did find myself having to skip a couple of tracks because there's 19 pieces on here, and some of them are a little bit tedious. But you know, if one wants to, comparisons are odious, but this is a lot more enjoyable listen than Electronic Sound from George later, and a lot more enjoyable listen than Two Virgins or Unfinished Music #1 or Wedding Album, in my opinion, and a nice cover. So, that's about it. That's all I have to say for this album, and check it out, and thank you for watching. See you next time.